What Cuban rules didn't you like that you felt?
Well, it wasn't as much as my family had rules. It was more, I mean, my mom had some guide, of course, guidance and things you can do, you cannot do. For example, she had the law that if my brother and I, we were fighting, over anything, stupid things that kids do, she would hit us with a belt, both. Not one, but whoever, if you were guilty, you're gonna get hit, and if you were not guilty, you were gonna get hit too. Yeah, everybody got hit. So that was like a main rule, in our house.
So you didn't tell anyone.
So we didn't fight over anything, and but it was more cultural, social rules, that if you went out into the streets and you were facing Miami as a culture, an extension of Cuba, you were still had those rules that they were applied to you in Cuba, but in Miami, and they really did not apply anymore in Miami, but because it's part of the United States. So it was I found it very tough for some people to assimilate early on, first generation Cubans. My family, for example, they had like a cutoff point. If it was like across the street from Flagler, where they live, that was Coral Gables. They wouldn't go there because that's Coral Gables. They wanted to live in the northwest, Saue, and northwest. That was more like a Cuban territory. So they had that cutoff. That was the rule. Don't go to Coral Gables. You'll get lost. It's a lot of white people there. They'll know they're not gonna help you get back home, basically.
My rules, I couldn't. The rules of the house were mira oye calla. I wasn't allowed to repeat what I heard in the house. But the three monkeys were everywhere. All right, when they cover their eyes, they're I couldn't do. And then when Juan came into the picture, he brought even more rules because he was the ultimate machismo Cuban man. The guy that, he wouldn't be in a room with a man that was gay. Mm-hmm. If he was in a room a gay man walked in, he'd walk
exactly,
out.
Exactly, yeah.
Not allowed to drink in public. Can't let nobody drink in public. Mm-hmm. Very no flash. Mm-hmm. You have to confuse the people of who you are. Don't let them... he was always confusing people. Yeah. So he brought different rules into my life. We weren't allowed to talk on the phone about anything. Like, even if I knew something, I wasn't allowed to. I'll never forget them pulling up one day and me getting into a beef. I had to be maybe Mercy's age, 6, and getting into a beef outside, and the cop broke it up. And me talking to the cop, my mother coming up to me going, don't say 2 words to the motherfucker. You're not allowed to talk to cops. It was like there were so many fucking rules in my house growing up that it was confusing. And I kept to them. Like, I never repeated the life I was living inside my house. But one of the positive rules that my mother had was I was not allowed to speak Spanish outside the house. In the house, she wanted me to speak Spanish. I still remember us having that conversation that she didn't want to raise no fucking Ricky Ricardo with an accent. That your accent has to be American. You're an American. My rules, the plan for me was laid out. How these Arabs complain? I left because they wanted me to marry my cousin. Well, I had the same rules. I wasn't going to marry my cousin. They pretty much had a woman for me to marry. It was her goddaughter. Mm-hmm. That was the plan, that I married her goddaughter. So they always pushed us together when we were kids. But my mother's plan was high school, the service, el ejército, because she wanted to give back to the country what the country had done for her. So she wanted me to do 4 years, then go to college, then go to law school. That was the plan. That's why when I got left back in the 7th grade, I'm like, her plan's not going to work out because I can't even make it out of the 7th grade. I'm so fucking stupid. So that was her plan. That was it. I knew in high school that I was going to go into the Army. Like, she was going to force me into the Army. Like, there was no way about it. That was her main goal. You're giving this country 4 fucking years for what they did for us. And even though she was a numbers and she on the bar and she was a drunk, those were her principles. So it's really weird, the rules I had growing up. I couldn't wear my hair a certain way. I couldn't part it. What side do Cubans part their hair on? A Cuban man has to, yes, on the left side.
Yeah.
If you part it on the right side, that means you're a fag. So every once in a while, I would experiment with my hair, and I'd fucking comb it to the right side, and I'd go to breakfast, and she'd go, "What are you, Rock Hudson?" And I go, "What are you talking about?" She'd go, "Put your hair on the other side before I smack you." Remember in the 70s, it was popular to wear a scarf with a little bow, and you tighten it. You remember?
I was always sweating in Miami.
Okay, so there was
We didn't have a
in the
scarf
70s.
there. Yeah.
In the 70s, there was a style
Yeah.
that you put a scarf around your neck.
Yeah,
and it was,
yeah.
And it was just a little circle.
Yeah.
And you took the circle and put the scarves. And
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
like a hippie movement for a while. I'll never forget the first time I put one of those things on and went to the living room. She just looked up and she was like, "What are you, a fag? Take that off right now. You're embarrassing me." You know what I'm saying? Like shit like that. Like it wasn't allowed.
Yeah.
Like if you were laying on the floor, I was not allowed to cross my mother's body. So she's laying on the floor on her stomach watching TV.
Yeah.
Cubans are not allowed to cross the body because that means that in a cemetery, you have to walk around them.
Yeah.
You couldn't say the word cancer in my house.
Yeah.
My mother would spit on herself.
Yeah.
So whenever somebody would say cancer, she'd go,
Yeah.
and she'd spit on herself, and you're like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?"
Yeah.
You know, it was just so many basic little things, and I forget half of them.
Yeah.
Like I forget 3/4 of them now.
Yeah.
But there were just so many fucking rules I had that were ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, I just like you, I love my parents and I'm grateful for them because everything that I am today is because of them, all the sacrifices and everything. But there was a lot of funny shit, going on. It's like when we first got to Miami in 61, my dad, first thing he got was a TV with his first paycheck. He started on credit. Back in the day, old Cubans had credit, and credit cards and stuff. And we got a TV. And so on Sunday, whenever football came on television, and my mom said, we didn't have football in Cuba, American football, and she sees like these guys wearing like tights and they're close to each other, and one guy's got his hands underneath the other guy's leg to grab a ball, and she goes, no quiero que vea, I don't want you to watch this. This is wrong. So there was no football in my house while I was living with
all those men with tight pants on, touching each other. Nah,
no,
we don't want that.
Really,
no, I could just see it.
Yeah,
there was the machismo was so high, even with moms. Moms dreaded it because moms knew the torture that kids were going to get if they, Cuba in the 50s and 40s was very anti-gay. And when Fidel took over, it was even more anti-gay.
I think pretty much the whole world was pretty anti-gay back then,
For Cubans, I've read stories of, there was a time in Cuba where it was such a disgrace that the neighbors would talk the parents into taking the child shark fishing and throwing them off the boat. In the Celia Cruz story, they killed her brother or her nephew because he was gay.
Yeah.
It was a different time in Cuba to be gay. It wasn't like flamboyant. But Rock Hudson went down there every weekend and was gay in Cuba. And they accepted him. Marlon Brando, there's stories about Marlon Brando going down to Cuba and being gay, And I remember being a kid and hearing Cubans telling me about different personalities. And I go, "How the fuck do you know about this?" And they go, "Because when I was a kid, they would come to Cuba." And we were kids. We would follow them around. When Michael Jackson, remember when Michael Jackson put the kid outside the window and 10,000 people outside?
Yeah.
That's what would happen in Cuba when like a celebrity would go to a hotel.
Yeah.
The Nacional or something like that. People would get the word around town, who's ever in town, whoever was big at that time, Sinatra. When Sinatra was at the Nacional or whatever, there were fucking 200 Cuban skinny chicks outside waiting to suck his dick.
Yeah.
He would pick them and choose them, If you read the book of Anna Nocturne, it talks about him being in Cuba a lot. And his sexual fucking
We're going in like fucking Marines, you understand me?
Welcome to church, motherfucker.